Bookwrights House, where stories go beyond entertainment. They ignite, change, challenge norms, and offer us a glimpse into the untamed paths some dare to take. Today, we are joined by a man whose story is as bold as it is unforgettable. Gary Kinsey, author of The Man at the Table, takes us on a wild, heartfelt, and eye opening journey across oceans, borders, and philosophies, all fueled by a belief in freedom, healing, and living life on your own terms. Good day, Gary. I'm Elijah Barcelona, and on behalf of Bookwrights House, thank you for being here. We are thrilled to dive into your book, your life, and the stories behind the smoke. So let's begin. Now, first off is the breaking point and beginnings. Gary, the man at the table, opens with such a visceral scene. You stepping off a boat, fresh from surviving months at the sea and yelling at the skies. Can you take us back to the exact moment? What emotions and experiences came crashing in all at once and led to that outburst?
It was overwhelming joy having completed a successful mission where everybody got paid and nobody got caught, and it was just a lifelong dream come true.
Mhm.
So my philosophy for years has been opposed to the war on drugs, and I fought it every way I could in federal courtrooms, wherever I could. I tried to overturn that law, and when any of that didn't work, I just went ahead and did my own thing and got heavily involved in the cannabis industry to the point where I knew early on that I wanted to smuggle, and I finally accomplished that goal and smuggled a load of weed. And so it was the end of a dream come true. So I
Okay.
looked at this. I got off of the boat. I mean, we were in one hell of a storm out in the Atlantic Ocean, and it was an ordeal. I was at sea 3 months, so I was glad to park the boat, get off of it. I got on my hands and knees and kissed the dock, and I looked at the heavens and I said, "Fuck you, Richard Nixon."
Okay. Uh, you mentioned that your book boldly takes on the government's war on drugs. So, looking back, especially on the smuggling era, how did you feel the prohibition shaped lives, yours and the others?
It changed our whole country. When they declared war on Americans with the war on drugs, it was a war on Americans. And I saw just thousands and thousands of people getting in trouble over smoking marijuana and going to jail and really upsetting their life. The whole thing was just a horrible tragedy. And it's the biggest thing that turned the youth against our government that's ever happened. They declared war on us, you know. I'd served my country honorably for 3 years, and I'd get out and they declare war on me for wanting to smoke pot. So I took it kind of personal. So we all kind of considered ourselves warriors, fighting against the establishment to get people the marijuana they wanted to smoke. It was fun. It's still fun today. It's the same dynamic working today. I mean, they're out there trying to put people in jail for smoking marijuana. And I've been a political junkie my whole life. And at the time, 1970, when they started the war on drugs, all the intelligentsia of the United States told Richard Nixon, don't put cannabis on that drug. Keep it off. Because in the 60s, all the smart people were already smoking pot. Don't make it illegal, you know. He promised he wouldn't, and then he did. So that was the motivator for me.
Okay. So, cannabis for you is more than a product, so it's more of a belief. Can you
Yep.
share a specific experience that solidified your conviction in it as a healing and joyful force?
Well, when I first got involved in the industry was on St. Pete Beach. And it was on St. Pete Beach, Florida, where the importation of Caribbean weed began. Up until that point in history, it had all been Mexican weed, shitty Mexican weed. And a couple of guys from the beach went down to Jamaica and brought back some bales of Jamaican weed. And I didn't know anything about it, but I started studying the whole Jamaican culture. And the Rastafarians were the ones growing the weed. And I studied the Rastafarian movement to see what that was all about. And it was about this emperor, Haile Selassie from Ethiopia, had been kicked out of Ethiopia for his belief in cannabis as a healing power. And he settled in Jamaica, and that's where the whole Rastafarian thing started. So, having smoked the weed, I studied the history of it, and it just all made really good sense.
Okay, so let's talk beyond the adventure. There's vulnerability. What was the most difficult part of living a life that didn't always align with the law? Were there moments of doubt that you explore in the book?
Oh, well, there was always the threat of going to prison, which I did. I got arrested a couple of times. I went to prison. It was no big thing. I had a lot of fun in prison. I can tell you wild stories about it.
Uh-huh.
I mean, I've always had this attitude. I'm going to live my life and be me wherever I'm at, and I'm not going to change for anybody. And I carried that all the way through in all my experiences, and it's worked out so far.
It's good to hear. And yes, I would love to hear those stories inside the prison. Maybe another time. Okay, so let's talk about love, loss, and living loud. Your book touches on the women you've loved, a colorful and complex part of your story. How have your relationships reflected, challenged, or even grounded the life you chose to live?
Well, it's almost impossible to have a relationship and be involved in an illegal enterprise.
Mm.
You bring so much jeopardy to everybody. So you the women in my life were always just accessories. They served a purpose. There was never any love involved. My first wife, I'd gotten drafted. I was in the military, and the only way you didn't have to live in the barracks is if you got married. So I went home and proposed to my high school sweetheart, got married, so I didn't have to live in the barracks. So she was with me for 5 years. We were in Germany for 2 years, and came home from the military and divorced her. I left her. I came to Florida, and then she divorced me. And my second wife, I'd been arrested for marijuana in upstate New York, 107 pounds of weed. And I knew that to look good in front of a judge, you got to be married and have a job and all that kind of stuff. So I asked my girlfriend, let's get married. So I wanted to have a good show in front of the judge. So both of my wives were just useful tools. There was never any love. My love has been the cannabis business, and that's still my main love today. I've got a girlfriend now, and she kind of feels like me about the same thing, so we get along pretty good.
Okay, that's quite shocking, intriguing, but yes, curiosity kills the cat. So, oh, okay. Okay, now let's talk about reflections and realizations. Writing a book like this is an act of reflection and courage. What surprised you the most about yourself as you revisited your past while writing The Man at the Table?
That I can remember all that shit. I mean, I hired a ghostwriter, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he'd come over every Thursday or Friday and spend 2 hours, record and type and ask questions. And we just went back to the very beginning. He just followed the chronological timeline from when I first got involved in the business up until the current day. And so it was a 2 year project to writing this book. He came over for a couple hours a week. He was chairman of the journalism department at the University of Florida. So was a successful writer on his own part and had ghostwritten other books for other people. It was a really good experience, and just to be able to go back and recount and think about everything that had been involved in that whole process was kind of cathartic for me. It made me feel okay about everything. And my brain still worked. That's what shocked me.
So, to those questioning authority or resisting societal norms, what message do you hope they'll take from your journey?
Well, there's a game that we played in this business. You know, everybody wants to play video games, and my game, my only game since 1971, has been a game called Feds versus the Heads.
Okay, okay.
All right, that's
Mm-hmm.
my game.
Mm-hmm.
Every day that I do something illegal in the cannabis business is fuck you to the feds. It's still a motivating factor. The heads are still winning. That's my game. The heads versus the feds. You know, I could get caught again. I don't know. If I do, I don't care. I mean, I do care, but it's no big thing. They can't, just think, they can't lock up everybody in America who smokes marijuana. They don't have the resources for it. I'm a 78-year-old man with a bad heart. I served my country honorably in the military. What are they going to do to me? Here I'm in Gainesville, Florida, the University of Florida, and probably 50% of the population of Gainesville are cannabis friendly. Nobody cares here. They're not even arresting people for weed anymore. They don't want to do the paperwork. So this is the time to, share the stories.
So let's imagine you're sitting at the table with your younger self or even with a politician from that era. What would you want to say about the choices you made and the life you've led?
Well, when I got out of the military, went back to college, my goal was to become a lawyer and an educator.
Mhm.
And after 2.5 years of pre law, I decided that I didn't want to do that anymore. I didn't want to be a lawyer because, in my mind's eye, at that point in my life, in order to be successful in either law or politics, you had to sell your soul. And I was not going to sell my soul. I stayed true to my soul and I sold weed, and it worked out pretty good.
Okay, yeah, you do what you really want.
Yeah, and the whole thing. I mean, there's lots and lots of travails in my life's journey, but follow your bliss. Do what you want to do. Don't be afraid of these people that wear badges. Fuck, it's just silly. They want to slow you down and tell you, no, you can't do that. It's against the law to have too much fun. Nah, that's okay.
So
Follow your bliss.
before
That's all.
okay, so before we end the interview, I want you to show us the physical copy of your book. And can you invite our viewers to read your book and where can we purchase your book?
This is the book, Man at the Table. If you look closely at the cover, it's got an outline of my head in there. And inside that outline of my head, you'll see a sailboat and a big storm and the marijuana and the pretty girls. Those are all aspects of my life that were true. Now, you can buy this book on Barnes & Noble or Amazon.com. It's available in hardback, paperback, and ebook.
Okay. So how was it working with Bookwrights House or Into Script? So how was it working with us in particular?
Well, it's been pretty easy to work with. I just had a lot of doubts about the whole thing, whether it was even legitimate or not. There's so many people out trying to steal your money all the time. I still am not absolutely certain that even you people are on the up and up. I've already spent some money, and we'll see where it goes. That's been my biggest concern. Is Bookwrights House a legitimate company?
Thank you for that. Okay. So Gary, thank you for your honesty, your grit, and your voice. The Man at the Table isn't just a memoir, it's a ride, a reckoning, and a reminder that life lived boldly is life fully felt. To our audience, thank you for joining us today at Bookwrights House. Until next time, stay curious, stay daring, and don't be afraid to light your own fire even if it ruffles some smoke. Thank you so much.
All right, you're welcome.